You're about to listen to the Complete Developer Podcast, the podcast by coders and for coders about all aspects of life as a developer.
I'm Will, the curmudgeonly experienced developer.
And I'm Beej, the optimistic newbie developer. Welcome to another episode of Complete Developer Podcast. Before we get started, Will, what have you been fighting this week?
Well, not really fighting. It's been relatively smooth. I've been writing a lot of documentation for work. You know, everything's going to hit after the first of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm writing up docs for another developer. I know he's competent, but I don't know him all that well. And so I'm writing the docs a little bit more in an anal-retentive fashion than I probably would normally. Yeah, and, you know, it's not been that hard. I kind of enjoy some writing. So it's...
Well, we've talked about you in technical writing.
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me, and I get home and I'm not just absolutely beat to death. So it's okay. And the other thing I'm doing right now is a lot of goal setting. So like I actually went to Publix. I made a special trip to Publix and bought a new notebook.
Nice.
To keep all my goals and stuff, because my other one was just random. You know, like you turn one page and there's stuff I'd written down while I was playing a game. And then there was another page and it was stuff for work. And then another page is stuff for a different work. And another page of a grocery list that I never filled in. I mean, it's just like this random notebook, and I realized there was a cognitive overhead there, and I'm going, okay, I've got to switch. And so I'm kind of figuring out what I want to do over the next year. You know, I have the book outline, and I'm trying to figure out what my milestones are, you know, for getting chapters written and edited and, you know, through the pipeline and ready to go. And I'm kind of doing the same with all my projects right now. You know, it's a fairly easy time of year at the moment, so I'm trying to take advantage of that. I'm also just frankly taking a lot of time off. I didn't realize how burnt I was. Yeah. And, you know, so there's been a lot of days I've just come home and I've played video games, and that's all I've done.
I understand that. This week before last played a lot of DuckTales Remastered.
I remember the Nintendo DuckTales, man. I played that thing like crazy when it came out.
That was one of my favorite TV shows as a young child, and one of my favorite video games.
Yeah, of course, you know, now I look at it and I watch Scrooge dive off the balcony towards the coins, and I'm like, you know, if you did that, that would really hurt.
Well, I just think of the Family Guy episode.
Because it's not going to move. It's just going to be a lump of metal right there.
Well, my nieces think it is the funniest game ever. All except for Transylvania. We're not allowed to play Transylvania because it gave them nightmares.
Huh. Wait, like Simon's Quest or...
No. The Transylvania in DuckTales.
Huh.
The ghosts... fair enough, they're 5 and 3, but the ghosts gave them nightmares, so my sister said they're not allowed to play that.
Okay, I was thinking of the... what was that video game that had... where you're going after Dracula? That was Transylvania.
But anyways, their favorite game is DuckTales. And so that is what we play all the time. Even though I took the time, created an entire world in Minecraft just for them. They each have their own city, their own castle in that city. I built the Uncle BJ Tower, which is a big ivory tower in the middle of the world where all the mine carts go to. It's like the central hub.
Yes, I've never played Minecraft. I get the impression that it's very, very addictive.
It is. Like I played that world on creative with peaceful just because the whole point was to set it up.
Yeah.
I was explaining to my niece, I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay inside right now because it's nighttime and there's monsters out there and I don't want you to get scared. And she's like, well, I won't get scared. So we went out and she saw me attack some monsters and stuff. But what was funny is I was explaining to her what I was building, and she was like, well, why don't you just fly down there? I was like, because I'm not in creative mode, I'm in survival mode, and you can't fly in survival mode. It's like, I have your world set up so that you guys can build whatever you want and be as creative as you want. It's like, this world...
It's more like the real world. Yeah. It sucks.
Like, in this world, if I want something, I have to go and mine the iron and cut down the trees and all that stuff. You know, I was like, this world is a bit more difficult. And I was like, eventually you guys will work your way into a world like this. But for right now, I want you guys to learn how to play this way. But they like DuckTales better because they find the Scrooge running around is hilarious.
Yeah, and hitting stuff and like knocking things off the ceiling. And, yeah.
My 3-year-old niece finds it hilarious to make him hit walls because of the reaction, the way his eyes shake back and forth and stuff. You know, she spent like 30 minutes when it was her turn to play with the controller, just standing at a wall, hitting it and giggling. And so,
well, whatever works.
Yeah, so that's been the main thing I've been doing. Did have a kind of an interesting thing. If you guys have noticed, I have kind of been a little lax lately on the email updates and things like that.
Yeah, there's that one that I completely dropped the ball on. Like, was it Christmas Eve or something? Because we were trying to scramble around and get ready to go, and then you're like, "Hey, can you send the email?" And I'm like, "Not really," because I'm going to go to my parents' house where the microwave kills the internet, and that's not likely.
Well, I was.
You've had some drama.
Yeah, I was in the hospital. Well, not in the hospital. I was in the emergency room. Turns out...
That counts as hospital, man.
Yeah. Turns out I have kidney stones. Well, I think I've passed them by now. But let me just say that's not fun. I do not recommend it to anyone. You guys know that I had an interview scheduled for this week, and I was not able to go to that because I was in the emergency room. Thankfully, they understood. They've been really kind about it, and we've rescheduled. So, kind of got that. The good thing about that is it's given me a little bit more time to work on my portfolio. Currently, it's a page on my blog, and I kind of want to put it on its own separate site. But that's about it. So, guess it's time to roll that glorious music.
You just like to find an adjective that...
I love the music. I mean, it makes me smile. It gets me through those rough nights of pain from kidney stones.
I guess so. You know, like, I think every time I hear that music, I think it would be the appropriate background music for a horror film where somebody's being beaten to death by clowns.
This week for IoTs, have something for the kids, the younger kids. This is called the Delightful Interactive Toddler Spoon. And it's really neat. It's at Instructables.com. They even have a video on there on how it works. But the idea behind it was, if you've ever had to feed a toddler, and I have a nephew that's 18 months old, so know exactly what they're talking about here. It can be a lot of trouble because they'll start to eat and something will distract them. You know, it's the typical, ooh, squirrel. Or in my nephew's case, ooh, a ball. And they end up refusing to eat because they want to go do something else. The cool thing about the Delightful Spoon is it's an interactive toddler spoon that's designed to attract the toddlers during mealtime. It has touch sensors, and every time they put the spoon in their mouth, it lights up, and I believe it even makes a little noise or something. And on here it shows how it was built. So that is Instructables.com, and I will put a link in the show notes for you guys. All right, guys. Happy New Year. This week we are...
Happy almost New Year.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's New Year's Eve. We can call it Happy New Year.
Yeah, there's probably... it depends on where our listeners are.
Well, there is that.
There's probably like this one dude in Hawaii sitting there going, it's not New Year for me yet. So, you want to make sure.
So this week, being the new year, what we're going to do is Will and I are going to give our predictions for what's to come in technology and software for 2016.
And for the show and
everything
everything else. It's not really too much, but...
No. So we're going to start off, we're just going to go back and forth.
So we each wrote a half a dozen.
Yeah, just like our resolutions. Yeah. So though this time, instead of going just in order, we're going to try it out going kind of a back and forth. So Will's going to start us off with his first prediction.
Okay, my first prediction for 2016, this is kind of a result of the terrorist attacks that happened in France and that happened in America. And knock on wood, hopefully we won't have any more before this comes out. But I expect to see increased government demands for backdoors to encryption. We're already seeing quite a bit of that. I think the tenor will pick up. Especially as the U.S. moves into election season, when people don't realize just how dangerous an encryption backdoor is. And so we're going to see our politicians do a lot more of that. You'll see it everywhere.
It's funny. There's been a lot of talk about security lately in just the different podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah, there's a lot of very serious concern because, whereas the groups we have gone against before tended to be, mostly non-state actors. They were funded by states, but and by states I mean like actual governments, not. Yeah. They were a little less organized, and ISIS is, and some of these others are far more organized. Mm-hmm. They do have state support. They're starting. I mean, ISIS has a help desk.
Yeah.
For their jihadis. I mean, think that through. That's a whole nother level of stuff hitting the fan. And so we're going to see our government start to become a lot more reactive. And the main way that they'll do this, I believe, over the next year is that they're going to try to get backdoors into encryption. They're going to try it legally and try to force it. Which, by the way, if they do that, you can pretty much kiss e-commerce goodbye. Mm-hmm. Because there's going to be so many credit card breaches from that. And so many other things go sideways that it would be bad. So they probably aren't going to actually get that through because there's enough of us that are going to scream at them about that. But they will be sneaking back doors into things. So kind of be on the lookout for your security products. Be paying attention to this because I really think this is going to be a thing in 2016. I expect it probably already is as far as the back doors. I mean, they've found NSA back doors and other things in the past. Mm-hmm. And it's completely improbable that there's not some now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, what's your first prediction for the year?
All right, well, mine is a little bit on the lighter side, kind of going to IoT. I'm predicting that some of the larger watch companies are going to start integrating IoT wearables into their devices. Now, I know Timex and Rolex already have some smartwatches, but I think they're going to become big players, and they're going to become bigger players than they are, and we're going to start seeing more traditional-looking watch faces with IoT technology in them.
Well, and I also think that the smartwatches are going to kind of come into their own because, if you remember when smartphones came out, we really didn't know what to do with that UI for a while. Because if you remember like the Pocket PC 2003, It was like, okay, what are we doing? Well, we're putting a computer on a phone, and that's not really what mobile is. Mm-hmm. And I think right now we're sort of trying to put a phone on a watch.
Yeah.
And that's not what a smartwatch is either. And so it'll be interesting to see, because I think that that's going to shake out. Somebody's going to get user interface metaphors that work better than what we have, and we're going to see an absolute explosion in something that that people have been making fun of for a while.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that do use wearable technology. For example, I was sitting at Starbucks this afternoon before coming over here, working on some paperwork and blog posts really, And I overheard a conversation. The lady sitting at the table beside me was kind of helping some kids. I think she was their teacher or tutor or something, but she was explaining to them, how her smartwatch tracked her heart rate and different things like that.
Yeah, there's really a lot of opportunities in that space, especially with low power devices that are, for a few specific tasks. So not necessarily a smartwatch, but just an enhanced watch.
Yeah, that's where I see a lot of the current big name watchmakers.
Yeah,
like Citizen, Rolex, Timex, things like those. I see them coming into it and not making the kind of plasticky, almost cheap looking. Even though they're not cheap, they look cheap.
Yeah, well, they got cheap plastic around them, and that's So I think that's gonna change quite a bit. I like I said, I don't think that it will be like all the smartphone technology. I think it's going to be scaled down because you have a lot of power consumption issues. Mm-hmm. You have an even smaller screen.
I remember not that long ago when phones kept getting smaller and smaller, and the joke was, you're going to have a phone that's going to sit on your pinky and talk on it.
Right, and then porn appeared on mobile, and everybody's screens started getting bigger. That's the running joke I've always heard, is that they suddenly figured that out and the growth curve went the other way.
Well, I think where things were going with the smaller and smaller phones, it has a market in the IoT wearables.
Yeah, it does. Or it has a market in being ancillary to something that your smartphone has.
Yeah. Now, one thing I would like to see, and I know a lot of people were hoping that this would be the case with the Apple Watch, was for it to replace the phone. But as of right now, there's not.
Well, and I mean, honestly, do you want to hold your arm up and talk into your wrist for any extended period of time? Unless it's on Bluetooth or something. Yeah, but then you got to worry about power consumption.
Yeah.
Anytime if it's doing any network.
Well, the thing is, the way it works now, from what I understand, is the watch Bluetooths to the phone. And
the phone's network is used. But you got to think the phone is still having to do communication. Yeah. I mean, that is going to run battery down, and you don't have a whole lot of space for battery. Mm-hmm. Plus, if you're actually wearing it on your body, it's one thing to have a phone on your hip that's hanging off your belt loop. That's not too terrible. But you have anything with much weight on your wrist gets pretty irritating pretty quick, especially for most of us that are, most of the people that are going to be buying that are sitting at desks all day.
I know. I just have a regular old Citizen watch. I take it off when I'm typing a lot.
Well, my watch band broke in 2005 and I never fixed it.
Oh, so what you're saying is you need a pocket watch?
No, I really don't. I don't need a watch. I mean, I grew up out in the sticks, and so I can actually a lot of times tell time. If I can see the sun, I can tell what time of day it is. So another thing I'm predicting for 2016 is that Microsoft will announce some sort of MS Linux. Now, they're already moving towards Linux. From my understanding, they have some support areas where they have Red Hat Enterprise Linux support people sitting right next to Microsoft support people. So when you have a problem on Red Hat that's for a Microsoft product, they don't go, oh, well, you need to call Microsoft's tech support. They hand the phone to another guy or another gal, whoever's in the office. And so I expect that Microsoft is probably going to announce some sort of Linux.
I know I've heard a lot about .NET on Linux.
Yeah, well, they're moving so much stuff there. I would not be surprised at all to see that. I wouldn't be surprised to see SQL Server go to Linux, because you think about really, really big server hardware. You don't think Windows Server most of the time. You think, okay, there's Linux or there's Unix or something. Mm-hmm. And, Microsoft wants to get into that space, and the numbers make sense if you can get the database to be performant.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised at all to see some sort of Linux out of them within the next year. As much as they're open sourcing their tools and they're moving everything off, Windows is a liability. It's got a lot of old code in it, and it's got a bad reputation. It's got stuff that's, security holes that have been kept purposefully because if you removed it, old stuff would break. And so they may very well start making a clean break with the past. There's a reason Windows 10 is going to be evergreen. What kind of revenue model can they get out of that? Mm-hmm. So they're doing something, and I think that's what it is. So what's your next one?
All right, next on my list, I've got. I predict that in 2016 we're going to see Bitcoin go down in value. Major banking's industry has started to get into Bitcoin, and I see all of the regulation that goes along with the major banking industry that has not been in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I mean, once the banks get into it, that regulation is going to come along, and a lot of people that like Bitcoin are not going to like that.
Well, the regulation and the oversight, it's the same problem really with encryption. The government wants to see those Bitcoin transactions. And if you ever go and look at, just go to YouTube sometime and look at some of the documentaries about the dark web, about some of the stuff that's gone on, and you can pay. You can pay to see people get killed. Mm-hmm. With Bitcoin, there's some really scary stuff going on, and I expect governments will get after it more. Plus, they can't get their cut off of it. Yeah. I mean, it's a profit motive thing. They don't care that people are getting killed, but they do care when they don't make any money off that transaction.
So, what do you have next?
Well, I hate to always be Debbie Downer. I think a lot of these things are. These are good things mixed with bad, right? The bad things are happening because bigger good things are going on. But what I'm predicting is some sort of major IoT hack with the possibility of loss of life, or somebody getting seriously hurt. I mean, we're seeing more and more devices. We're seeing a lot of hobbyists do stuff. Something's going to happen eventually. People are pushing the edge. I saw a thing where a guy made it was like a robotic lawnmower. He took a lawnmower and modified it basically with sensors and everything like a Roomba vacuum cleaner, except it cuts his lawn. Okay, you got people doing things with machinery and trying to be programmatically do things. That space is fraught with risk. Now the human potential is tremendous. The amount of work that we can get rid of in our lives. It's way up there, so it is worth it. But I do expect that we will see something bad that will get hyped unbelievably. We're already seeing it with the drones stuff, with the FAA jumping in on that. If
we had the stuff like the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi and the Beagle board back when we were kids, I would have been one of those teenagers that was trying to make my lawnmower mow the lawn itself, because I hated doing that.
Yeah, well, my dad had a nursery.
Yeah.
You think about the kind of stuff I'd have been rigging.
Yeah.
It'll happen. And, it's really a good thing. It's part of the cycle of maturity of new technology is, there's all the hobbyists that get into it. And then eventually you get enough people where probability kicks in and something bad happens. Mm-hmm. We saw this with the internet back in the day because, after Oklahoma City, you could learn, there were people learning how to do, make explosives online. And that was the big, scary thing. And now, it's very easy to learn how to do that. But that's completely faded into the background because the internet has provided so much other value. And we're going to see the same thing with IoT. Mm-hmm. It's just, I suspect that this year will be the year of that stuff hitting and looking really bad. So I don't want anybody to panic, because when this does happen, this is a sign that the growth curve is accelerating. It's not bad. It's a necessary stage.
No.
So what's your next one?
All right. Well, my next one's also kind of, it depends on your view on this. It could be good or bad. I foresee that the vaping industry, not the e-cigarettes so much as the vape,
the e-bongs.
Yeah, pretty much. I've said a couple of times in private that I think that's a bubble that's going to burst, and I see that happening within the next year. At most 2 or 3, but it's something that all these places are popping up.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a lot of the .com bubble, because you had all these shops popping up.
Yeah. And you can see there's some of the marketing is very odd.
I see that as more and more places begin to ban vaping in public.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is kind of, people are sensitive to the smell, even though it's not really damaging them, and it doesn't stick to your clothes unless you're around, like if you ride in a car with somebody that's vaping the whole time, for several hours, yeah, you're going to smell like it a little bit.
Or if you're in an airplane with someone that is, and you have asthma.
Yeah, and those kind of things are going to kick in. Of course, the other side of this is, I think you're also going to start seeing that there are some health impacts to that stuff. Anything you put in, anything that comes in or out of your body has a health impact. And anything that stays in your body has a health impact.
Yeah.
You're part of a dynamic web of stuff. So I think you're going to see that.
I think there's going to be, one of the big things that I have noticed is there's not much research on it.
Yeah.
It's something that just kind of popped out, and I was surprised how, honestly, it surprised me the first time I ever saw it I thought someone was smoking in an airport.
Yeah.
And it threw me off. I said something to one of the people I was traveling with. They're like, "Oh, no, that's legal. That's vaping. You've never heard of it?"
Yeah.
No.
So I think there will be something that they'll find, and it may just be a scare, but I imagine that something will come down.
Oh, yeah. But I think that what's going on, you're getting all these little shops popping up everywhere, and there's going to be a bubble that bursts. Yeah. And I think it's going to happen in the next year or so. I do see the possibilities of the vaping market growing with recreational marijuana.
Yeah, which is the other side of it, because you got to bear in mind when marijuana got to be a big problem, problem in air quotes. A lot of that was the alleged health risks and some thoroughly racist stuff that was also used in the propaganda campaigns. That was a thing, and it was completely the risk was completely overhyped compared to other things that are legal, like the beer we're drinking right now.
Exactly.
And so that side of it will probably start coming back down. And so you'll probably see recreational marijuana be a bigger thing. The other thing that I'm very interested in is cannabis being grown. Because as recreational marijuana gets to be legal for smoking, there's less and less reason to say, oh, you can't grow cannabis to make paper, textiles, all the other things that can come out of that. Like that is a major, save the forests type thing that we're that's going to come down. So it's the other side of the pendulum.
There's also the part of the reason that marijuana was banned was because
it's not part. The people that funded it was the Hearsts. Yeah. They own papers, or they own paper mills and newspapers. And when they found basically a way that made using cannabis cheap to make paper out of, these people had just bought these vast tracts of forest and all these paper mills and all this stuff, and it was a major threat to their business model. And so they engaged in propaganda. Like, they funded all that reefer madness crap.
Yeah.
Like, that's documented. That's been there. And now that's going away. And so, yeah, that will change. You'll see that probably on a state-by-state basis continuing. I don't think the feds are going to clamp down on it. They kind of have other things to worry about, for one thing. And they want the tax revenue. Because if you see what happened in Colorado, Washington, some of these other states that have passed this, what ends up happening is the amount of tax revenue that they take up is insane. It's really replacing the revenue that they are losing on cigarettes as people figure out just how bad the cancer sticks are for you. It's also replacing some of the revenue lost on alcohol taxes.
Yeah.
And, gas taxes as well, because bear in mind, our vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient and we're getting more electric vehicles. And so what ends up happening is the states don't have the money to run the highway system. And so they're scrambling around trying to do anything they can. And that means that they're going to be like, hey, let's legalize marijuana and tax it, not because we care about your freedom, but because we're going to be broke. Most of the states also have very large pension obligations to the baby boomers who are retiring now. So they have this major fiscal cliff coming up, and that those dynamics are going to change and push. You're not going to see just medical marijuana. You're going to see it be completely legal in all 50 states, more than likely, very, very soon.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be, and I think that's more of a, 5-year plan.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a year.
Yeah,
more than likely, but
the
pressure is on them.
I do know more and more states, like it's been brought up.
Tennessee.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been brought up here in Tennessee, even for medical and for decriminalization of having small amounts of it.
Yeah,
to where it would no longer be illegal to have a certain amount.
Well, I mean, for crying out loud, marijuana should be legal in Tennessee. We have Willie Nelson living here. I mean, there's a certain point where you just got to go. This war is already lost. What I suspect will happen next, and this is going back to the IT type market, is I think major integrated development environments are going to get increasingly cheaper or free. You're going to see better offerings out there. We've already seen, prices starting to drop on Visual Studio. We're also seeing, Community Edition. Some of your other high-end IDEs are probably going to start doing the same thing because now there's a downward pressure. And there's economics behind this. It's just like the marijuana legalization. It's like, okay, companies don't necessarily care whether the users are happy as long as they're getting money. Mm-hmm. Well, what's starting to happen now is instead of buying all these servers and all this stuff, people are starting to put things in the cloud. And the cloud is starting to become a bigger and bigger slice of the pie for what these big companies are making. The idea of selling software is starting to go. Mm-hmm. And now it's, okay, I'm selling a service. I'm keeping a server up and running for you and secured and all the crap that goes with it, like all the HIPAA and all the stuff that has to go on. Yeah, it's just nasty. It's expensive. We're getting better containerization. We've been able to put an application in a VM, essentially, or, a Docker container, those kind of things, and have it live on the cloud. And we've got a tight environment that just has what we need, that has it configured the way we need, and it runs. And with those dynamics in place, what's happening is that cloud is starting to become a bigger and bigger part of all their strategies. It's a cornerstone of their strategy. And with that happening, now these companies, instead of going, oh, I want to charge you for Visual Studio because it's a productivity tool for you, now they're like, I want to charge you for Azure and I want to make it easy for you to build apps for it. Mm-hmm. And so here's a tool chain that does it. I'm also going to work with the people that write, that put out Eclipse. I'm going to work with, the people that make WebStorm and build all this stuff.
That makes perfect sense because I know this year, the 2015 Community Edition of Visual Studio has things in it that up until now were only available in the
paid ones.
Well, the premier paid ones.
Yeah. And, all the add-ins. They've allowed add-ins. I mean, initially when, and this is the way back machine, but when, the Express editions, which preceded the Community editions, they started out and you could not have more than one project open.
That explains the questions you asked me when we were working pair programming the other day.
Yeah, and I thought that was still a thing. And there's a lot of Microsoft developers that really don't realize, hey, there's free stuff coming out. And prices are just absolutely tanking on that stuff because it's not part of the larger market strategy.
Now there are some limitations on what you're allowed to use it to build, but
yeah, but those limitations partially are to reduce risk because they are still selling licenses and they are trying to transition. Yeah. They don't want their revenue model to disappear while the other one hasn't materialized yet. Mm-hmm. And so I suspect that, monetarily what's going to happen to them is they're going to get pushed in the right direction. And it's great for all of us. That's why you're seeing Microsoft and some of these other companies get into open source. Because now it's like, okay, I can run a server farm and I get recurring revenue. I don't get people like your mom buying Office 2003 with her new computer and never upgrading.
Yeah.
And, that's not a revenue cycle that you want. That's why Office 365 is a subscription thing. That's why all these websites are monthly is because it's a great revenue model, because then your sales cycle is not focused on, okay, I'm starting at zero every month. I'm starting from a recurring subscriber base and I can grow it, but I'm not going to tank. It's a lot more security for these companies. And so the economics are going to force these prices down. And we're going to get a lot better tooling across everything. And this includes your open source platforms. Because now you're going to have guys that are writing open source software that, they hate Microsoft and all this stuff. However, whatever they're building still has to compete with very much cheaper things. And let's be honest here, open source, part of the reason that it has penetrated as far as it has is price. Like that's one of the factors that is major here. And so this will also put pressure on them.
Yeah, I know. I was when I was started getting real serious with my learning to code. I looked at the prices for buying a single edition of Visual Studio, and I was like, it's too much.
Yeah, it's exorbitant, and it used to be worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's falling now. Of course, now you got Community Edition, and you got Visual Studio Code. So you're seeing that dynamic in the Windows space. You're going to see it in other places. Microsoft is a very large company, and when they move, other people move too.
Yeah,
because they have to. It's just a matter of time. So I'm really looking forward to how this shakes out, because I think that it's going to make our jobs a whole lot easier, a whole lot better. We're going to have better tooling, more options. It's really going to be a good thing. So what's your next one?
I predict that in 2016, we're going to start seeing computers with on the high end now. Like, we're talking like really high end gaming systems and stuff with 1 petabyte.
I don't know that that's in 2016. That seems kind of, because like you're seeing consumer 4 terabyte drives out there. A petabyte seems like that's going to be out of reach.
I don't mean like a single drive that is one.
Systems that have.
I'm talking about. I predict we're going to see.
I don't know if it'll be gaming systems. You can look at the prices. I think you're going to see high end servers. One thing I think a lot of us have not figured out yet is, what am I going to do with the amount of space I have?
Well, the thing is, look at the size of the games.
Yeah, they're getting bigger.
They're getting. The thing is, they're expanding to take up that space.
Yeah,
they don't have to do things,
but
like back in the old 8-bit Nintendo days, where they use the same color palette for
for 15 different things. I don't know if 1 petabyte is realistic in consumer hardware. Like Netflix's, I don't know if you saw the thing that Netflix has been doing, or they're going to start doing in the new year. But they're re-encoding their entire video library.
Really?
Yeah. They have a petabyte of movies. Like, I don't know that it's entirely realistic to get 1 petabyte down to the consumer level.
I think that we're going to see on the very, very top end. I'm not talking like your average consumer. I'm talking, the very top end.
Somebody who's stupid rich.
Yeah, stupid rich. The very, very top end, they're going to have those.
Yeah, I remember a guy, when I was growing up, and this was 93, 94, who had 20 megs of RAM. And it was just so far beyond anything. And he was that guy. Mm-hmm. It's like, let me get the board that will take the most that we can get in the market. And by the way, my OS can't do anything with that. I could easily see things in the the hundreds of terabytes. Like, I don't think your prediction is far off. I don't think it's as far off as it seems. I don't know that it'll hit 2016, but
I have a feeling that we're going to see something radical at the very, very top end, and that over the next 5 to 10 years, it'll work its way down to the affordable range. But I think we're going to see it come out.
So, it's possible. I'm a little bullish on that one actually hitting in 2016, but I think we'll get a substantial chunk of it.
I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes, and we'll talk about it at the end of the year. See which of our predictions came true and which didn't.
So my fifth one is that we're probably going to see a little bit of a bubble get popped in tech. And I think there's really two components here. The biggest one, though, really is going to be in the educational space as far as all the coding schools and as far as university degrees. The reason for this is because it's too expensive. Like, your return on investment is not as good as it could be because university has gotten so expensive. Well, like, you think about the school we went to. Right? We went to college. And you remember, the dorms were they were okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was in a nicer dorm than you were. The dorm you were in was a dump. But it was still livable.
Yeah.
And now, the demands have changed. A lot of these, a lot of the dorms they're pretty nice. And a lot of the buildings are nice. And if you go back to the campus where we were, they've rebuilt. They've built all kinds of stuff. That means that there's a whole lot of money flowing into education right now, into higher ed. And they're making a lot of decisions based on that cash flow. However, the people that are paying those bills have not seen their incomes rise materially to the degree that the university income has risen. And what happens when you have two exponential systems, one of which is growing at a faster rate than the other? What do the curves look like? One of them gets away from the other one.
Yeah, I'll say very different.
Yeah, and when that one's dependent on it, guess what happens? Splat. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see this pop a little bit. I think you're going to see a lot of smaller code schools get a little bit more agile and actually start really giving them a run for their money, because this is what we really need to have.
Well, I find this funny because I should point out, because it's going to seem different, but Will and I wrote our predictions separately.
Yeah. And
then only combined them after we'd written them. And my fifth prediction is on the same line. I'm predicting in 2016 that we're going to see a rise of long-term code schools that will eventually replace the boot camp craze. And by long-term, I mean closer to like
an apprentice type thing.
Yeah, apprenticeship type thing, where it's a 9 to 12 month program that then puts you into a apprentice junior position.
Yeah.
We have one here in Nashville called Nashville Software School that does that, and we've got some friends that are in it.
Yeah.
And what really started me thinking about this was an email I got the other day from Launch School, and it's a new program that's a 9 to 12 month program. That their big thing is we take the time to teach you the fundamentals and make sure you understand how to program before you learn the language. Well, as you're learning the language, but we make sure our focus is on how.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of the boot camps, they're so set on getting.
They want quick results.
They want quick results, and they want code monkeys, basically. They want people that can go out there and handle simple tasks and just
competitively.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that a lot of them are going to get schooled too, because you got to bear in mind their cost is not on the front end like university. It's in the 2-year contract.
Yeah.
And that's also egregious. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, let me get this job that pays, $30K a year. And oh, by the way, at year 2, I could probably be making 70.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving up a whole lot of money and mobility to work for these people. And I think that they're going to get spanked pretty thoroughly by the market as well. I really do. I think we'll see some upstarts that are going to disrupt this. I hope we do, because it's not really.
I think, like I said, with the email about that, and honestly, I was really interested until I looked at the languages they teach.
What did they teach?
Ruby.
Ruby's nice.
Ruby's not bad. It's just I would love to learn Ruby and be a Ruby developer, because I have a lot of friends that do it. I think it would be really interesting, but Ruby is not something that is very widely used here in Nashville.
Yeah, it's pretty much all .NET here. Mm-hmm. Although if you're pretty good at JavaScript, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's
the next thing I have on this. My fifth prediction is I think we're going to see more diversity in the languages that these code schools are going to have, because
because the price of getting an IDE is dropping, for one thing. So the schools don't have to put as much money into that. I mean, if they're even the educational licenses of Visual Studio and the upkeep required on all that. I mean, that's a cost.
Like I've seen, like I mentioned, Nashville Software School. They have a C# .NET tract.
Yeah, I mean, if I were you, I would go for Mean, or I would go for Node type things, because those JavaScript skills are still transferable. Mm-hmm. Because any web app you build, you're going to be doing JavaScript. It doesn't matter how good even if you have a good control library that you're messing with, you're going to have to do things in JavaScript simply because that's always going to be there. And I think that's going to start pushing further into the back end of the systems. Again, it all comes down to economics. Like everything we've been talking about is talking about economics, because that's what next year is.
All right, so for our last predictions, we're going to kind of give some predictions on the podcast. And what we're hoping to do is each year that we go through this, we'll do this for the first episode of the year. And our last prediction each will be a prediction for where we see the podcast going in the next year. So, Will, we'll go ahead and get started with you.
Well, mine is not necessarily the podcast. I think Beej will actually get a coding job.
That would be really nice.
It would, for a great many reasons. He's been training pretty hard. He's been learning a lot, and he's been interviewing some. Nashville has kind of got a weird situation with all the medical tech around here. Mm-hmm. That we have a pretty crap ecosystem for junior devs. There's not the ability to fill demand for senior devs, and so like our hourly rates are going up. Mm-hmm. Constantly, because there's not enough people to actually replace the developers that fall off.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're not training junior devs because, hey, you're working on sensitive systems that, they've got private health information, those sorts of things in the mix. People aren't looking for very many junior developers. They're looking for people that can think about, 5 or 10 things at once, because they've done most of the stuff enough they're not focusing on. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, we really, here in Nashville, we really have to fix that fairly soon, or we're going to have. It'd be great for me. Mm-hmm. I would love to double my hourly rate, but again, that's not good for the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. That's how you end up with a mass exodus to somewhere like Austin, which also has a pretty good.
The thing is, I was told today that Nashville has about 50 people moving down here every day.
Yeah. Nashville's exploding right now.
I know.
But we still don't have jobs for the junior devs. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that are junior that are looking. There's more of them, as far as I've been able to tell, than there are positions for them. Whereas senior devs, it's the other way around. I work with a mutual friend of ours, and we'll be sitting in the office, and his phone will ring, and I'll hear him go, "No, I'm not really interested in anything right now." About an hour later, mine will ring. And it happens a couple times a week. It's really getting kind of over the top. There's not enough senior developers, and part of that is because we haven't nurtured our junior developers. There's no track for them to actually get to a senior level. There's not enough of those jobs to grow the community. So I think, hopefully we can get you a tech job. You do have contacts that a lot of people don't have. So hopefully that will help.
Yeah.
And what's your last prediction? I guess this is the prediction for the podcast itself.
Yeah. So my prediction for the Complete Developer Podcast in 2016 is that Will buy more beer. I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's a good prediction for this weekend. It's not 2016.
So my prediction for 2016 is the podcast will reach over 100 regular listeners per episode. We have about 30 to 40. We're pushing up into the 50s now. Yeah. Just on a regular basis, but we have, I can consistently say each week we have about 38 to 40 downloads that are pretty regular.
Yeah, and it's, the growth curve is going up. I mean,
along with that, I see us developing kind of an open community, specifically with kind of a mentors-mentees interaction.
Yeah.
That's something we've talked about a lot, is something I've talked with my friends that are junior developers, and I've been told by a couple of people that they're jealous of our friendship. I was like, we were friends before I got into development.
Yeah, he shows up with beer.
Yeah. But I just like, they don't have that. And it's when they don't already know somebody.
Yeah.
And they're not going to a 4-year college where they can, meet up with people like that, but are in like a coding camp or one of the longer term coding schools.
It's a hard jump to make.
It really is. And especially if you don't know people already there. And so one thing that Will and I have talked about is working with some of the other communities that we know to set up a mentor mentee to like match up people, because we know we have friends that are senior developers that would like to mentor people but just don't know.
Yeah, well, it's good for their careers too.
Yeah, it is. And they don't know the junior devs or the people that are coming up, and they don't have a way of meeting them. So the idea is to provide that by creating this community. And I think that's going to really kick off this year.
Yeah, I mean, they do have, the thing is they think they can meet them in user groups, but a lot of times junior devs are intimidated by user groups. It's like, okay, we're going to go in here and we're going to discuss, C# microservices with whiz-bang technology number 3, whatever that is. Well, the junior dev is like, okay, I'm trying to understand classes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand generics. I'm trying to, I'm doing something at a different level. What's in this for me? And the answer is not a lot. Mm-hmm. User groups tend to be geared towards people that are already kind of established, mid-level or better.
Yeah.
And, the junior devs just fall off. And that's really, kind of tragic.
I know when I've gone to the user group meeting here in town.
Yeah, it's very good at my level.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But I've had a couple of people that help run it ask me, well, what'd you think of it? And stuff like that. I mean, we have a really good group, too.
Yeah, we do.
But then again, I'm also kind of different from a lot of people that are getting into development because I'm older and I'm kind of outspoken.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem telling you what I think about things.
Well, you don't have a problem asking for help, and you know the people around you to ask for help.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of the junior devs are really running into that they don't have that. They don't have those relationships and the contacts to be able to leverage that effectively. And they should have.
They should. And that's what we've been talking about a lot. We actually are going to do an episode next week kind of on that. It's going to be for junior devs and senior devs on asking questions for the junior devs and on giving advice for the senior devs.
Yeah, so that they both stop stinking at it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because we all kind of do.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying is I see us working with some of the other communities that we know, that we have friends in, and building a community of mentors and mentees, if that's the right word.
Yeah, and it'll probably mostly be just in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, it'll start off here.
But I think we're going to have forums and things, so it wouldn't necessarily be something that couldn't be replicated in other places. Just this is, I'm sitting in Nashville right now. So are you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of where we're coming from. And like I said, I predict that it's going to get started. I think that's going to be one of our big initiatives that we do with the podcast is going to be helping to develop that community. That is the final prediction that we have for 2016.
If you have a question or comment for us, please email us at neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com. Our theme music is an excerpt from Stand By for Titanfall by Pure Bells, available on SoundCloud and licensed under Creative Commons. The intro music for IoTs is OMFG Hello by Argo Fox and is also licensed under Creative Commons and available on SoundCloud. For references, show notes, and to sign up to our email list, be sure and check out the website at www.completedeveloperpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at CompleteDevPod and like our page on Facebook to keep up with news about the show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.